Come on.
Everybody, welcome back to the only podcast produced by three two-time winners of IMSA's Spirit of the Race Award. You're tuned into the Check Engine podcast. We're hosted on Anchor.fm and streamed worldwide on any platform that you use to listen to your favorite podcasts. My name's Nick. Joining me, as they do every week, are my two trusty pals, Andrew and Tristan, on the other sides of the line here. Guys, happy Sunday. How was your week?
It was a week.
It was a week. It was a real week. I had to go into work yesterday as well as, on the weekend, so Saturday, as well as, go into the actual building, which is so weird now. Like going in, to see things and to just completely empty, desolate buildings with all the lights off.
That sounds really creepy.
Yeah, it was just odd. I mean, and then, no traffic, obviously, and I mean, I saw maybe like 5 cars on a 40-minute drive. It's just super. We're finally at the point where, it's like, 28 days later or something.
Yeah, it is crazy. Absolute ghost towns everywhere. I left the house yesterday to go change oil in my parents' garage. That was like my big trip. Oh, and then we went down to Claire's place in Racine to get her mail. So we took a road trip. So like we did stuff yesterday. We were really tired.
Same. We went out and determined I'm not going into a Target, Walmart, Fleet Farm, etc. until this is all over, because we went and did pick up from a few places for stuff yesterday, topping off some essentials, etc. And like, people are going in there like 3 or 4 at a time, no masks, no gloves, and the place is packed. Like the parking lot is 2/3 full at Target on a Saturday, and no one's wearing masks or gloves. And I'm like, I'm good. I'll stick with pickup until later. Good with that.
What is going on?
Hardware
with the department stores and hardware stores are just like as full as I've ever seen them at any point. Still,
I think people just don't have anywhere to go.
Well, I think the hardware store side of it is that because people are home so much more, now they're all just tackling home projects. So like Home Depots, etc., are as busy as they've ever been, like outside of Black Friday or Father's Day.
Yeah.
But it's like a daily occurrence now.
Don't go do like Walmart walks with your kids just because you're bored at home now. It's a stupid idea.
Well, yeah, and don't send the whole family. Like, take a list and go. Like, one person. But anyway, we're not the coronavirus, behavior task force, but that was my experience yesterday, and I'm very happy that I opted for all pickup. But we did support some local places, pick up some food, pick up some popcorn from the local theater, and have a movie night, that kind of thing.
What movie did you watch?
We watched Hotel Artemis and The Lighthouse, which is deeply weird.
The Lighthouse is?
The Lighthouse is that like shot in 5x4 black and white.
Yeah, 32 millimeter black and white turn of the century lenses with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. Deeply weird, I will tell you guys.
Was it good?
Sounds like it's too much for me. Oh, yeah, was it good?
Yeah, it was good. It was fantastic. It was a magnificent spectacle, but it was a lot to wrap your head around.
Man, why are we doing
I
movie
don't know.
reviews right now? What is this? What are we?
Well, we're a car podcast, so let's talk about the topic tonight. Andrew brought this up last week. It's a really good idea. It is, well, with all the racing series obviously on hold right now and everyone just doing virtual stuff, we need to get into the heads of each of these series and become commissioner for a day. And coming out of this, when everything eventually gets back to normal, what new turns are we going to do with these series to drive them into the future? So we're going to be talking IMSA, IndyCar. Go ahead. Sorry, Andrew.
No, because the thing is, I mean, all of these series now are floating. There's always an idea out there, right? There's always some insider, or even, racers in the series, team owners, even CEOs and people who are internal to the companies floating ideas. Maybe it'll be NASCAR and IndyCar together. Maybe it'll be IndyCar and F1. Maybe it'll be, a double header race or a night race and a day race, or, all of these things. And some of them seem really cool. Some of them seem like bad ideas. And some of them seem almost like ways forward or new ways of thinking that have been caused by this need to sort of suddenly fit, a year's worth of racing into hopefully 3 or 4 months. But it seems to me like some of those ideas, they might want to hold on to those. They might want to put those into play no matter what happens, no matter when they get back to racing, because not all of them, because some of them sound really, really good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of these ideas, like a lot of it is just how are we going to fit a full season into a condensed time frame. But It's like, well, why are you just thinking about it for 2020? Why don't we we know that racing series are starving for audience. Like their target market, their biggest fans are growing older and they're not getting the younger fan base like they want to. So now's as good a time as any to just throw away the guardrails and start thinking about new creative ways to basically secure the future of the sport. Like without question, there's no better time than now. So it's going to be an interesting thought exercise. But before we get into that, does anybody have any news? I think, Andrew, you were holding over a Mazda news story from last week.
Yeah. Something we got to talk about. Well, actually, 2 things from Mazda that we have to talk about. 2 separate rumors. And okay, here's the first one. Mazda, small car company out of Japan, are saying or hinting once again, as they do this, about once every 3 years, but now they're hinting that a rotary engine will come back in a vehicle called the MX-30, which appears to be like their next generation of small SUV, probably built on the same platform as whatever that 3 Series will be. Does that move the needle for anyone? Rotary engine MX-30?
Well, I don't think it moves the needle for anybody. So I'm trying to wrap my head around why they keep insisting on bringing this back.
Or saying they're going to. That's the biggest thing. Is than we're going to do it, and then they don't.
Other than 48 hours of news coverage, what does it get them?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And it's not like there's a very small, passionate cult following for the rotary engine, but it's not like it's not like Mazda has introduced this thing and it's caught on and other people are copying it. It's not like something like, say, what like the EcoBoost did, where like it's something that they can hang their hat on over and over and over and over and over again that Ford can do. Like it's like, oh, we got this rotary, and like 7 people are like, woohoo, and they buy the car, and then no one else cares, so they discontinue it, and then they just hint at it and hint at it and hint at it, and it's like, why do you keep beating down this door when no one cares?
Yeah, and it's not even something like the 5-cylinder Volkswagen Group, Audi motor. That's like, here's something that has become, oddly traditional for us. We trot it out every decade and do something with it, and people love it. A lot of them get sold, and it's kind of like a limited edition heritage thing versus the kind of hope that Mazda seems to like throw out there for the rotary fans and then never actually make a car.
Yeah, they just dangle the carrot out there and see if anybody responds. And then, as per usual, like no one cares, then they don't make it. So like, why even bother? Like, just let it go, as Elsa would say. Just let it go.
Well, that's the thing. I would actually, at this point, push back against there being rotary fans anymore. No one's a fan of rotary because there aren't any. There was one car back about 17 years ago that actually wasn't that great. It was better than bad, but it wasn't amazing. It didn't blow anyone's mind really. And so then what are we left with? Old rotary race cars? Like, I don't think anyone truly is a fan of the rotary. They just like to say that because they want to say the word wankle. And you can just say wankle. Like, you don't have to try to back it up.
Yeah, I just think it's the horse has been dead for a long time. So we've got to take the stick out of Mazda's hands. Just stop beating it. Like,
yeah, and show up and make a Mazda Speed 3 while you're at it.
That's what people want.
Without a rotary. Just make a sweet little hot hatch.
I think it's what they want. Well, Mazda, being a car of the people, being a car for the people, and being very in touch with what the people want. So there was the rotary power. That was the first thing. The second thing, let me tell you a little about this. Last week, it was almost 2 weeks ago now. Mazda came out and announced that the next generation Mazda 6 will not only switch to rear-wheel drive, but also an inline 6.
Why?
Okay.
There cannot be a reason. There's no reason. There just isn't one.
Trying to ape BMW? I don't know.
Is this whole thing that we were talking about with Loaf a while ago, where like here's Mazda just trying to push upstream and reposition themselves for all they're worth?
I guess, but who's going to buy this? Who not you know what? That's not the right question. Not who will buy this, who will even comparison shop this, and against what?
I guess what's the price point? Because then that's when you start to comparison shop. I mean, how is Mazda positioning it? Is it supposed to be like against entry-level BMWs?
Well, I mean, it kind of, we know they're pushing up market for whatever that term is worth, but I mean, the previous Mazda 6 bumped up in price like somewhere in between the Honda and Acura range, or, like Toyota Lexus. And the comparison was always easily made between, Accord and Camry and the comparable SUVs. But if they're going to bump this up to the next level, to something that's against the BMW or against even like a entry-level Audi or Mercedes, they better have something to go along with it. And I guess maybe they're trying to scrap with Genesis would probably be my best actual guess, but they're not going to bring the cost. That's the counterpoint. Like, the whole thing about Genesis is that, yeah, it's slower than a 3 Series, but not that much slower, and you paid way less. And there's no value proposition coming out of Mazda now, and this won't help. This is going to be a more expensive car.
Right, exactly. Yeah, man, I don't know. It's tough to try to figure out what they're doing. Again, to use a phrase I go back to all the time, it'd be great to be a fly on the wall in these board meetings and like figure out who's approving this stuff.
A very loud fly, so you can shout, "What are you doing?" when they do stupid stuff.
I would just fly into their eye when they're about to approve something stupid,
right in the eye,
just to distract them. Yeah, try to prolong the decision a little bit more.
Or in the end, is this all bloviating and the new Mazda 6 will just be all-wheel drive and not have a 6-cylinder at all, and there'll be no rotary
turbo 4?
I mean, because that's what they tend to do. Just none of this comes to fruition at all. What do you think the chances of that are?
I would say I would bet more on that than anything else, just because that's Mazda's recent history. They announce stuff and never follow through with it. So
yeah, I think that's most likely.
I would put my money on that as a safer bet than what they actually said they were going to do.
Signs point to yes.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Oh, well. Well, good luck with that, Mazda. In other news, I've got some news regarding another Japanese brand that's not doing so hot right now. Yesterday, I got the chance to drive a car that is one of only 50 in existence. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I mentioned earlier on here that I went over to my parents' house to change oil on my vehicle. Well, their neighbor had, as I was pulling in, he was pulling out of his garage, really just moving the car out of the garage to get at his lawnmower, but it had a really nice exhaust sound, and it kind of caught me off guard. So I looked over, and it was a 370Z. And as I got out of my truck, I said, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Maybe I can drive it one day," just like as a joke. And he kind of went, "Yeah, cool. Hey, Nick, whatever." So I went in and I changed my oil on my truck. I changed my oil on Claire's car. And when I stood up from underneath Claire's car, and he was standing in my garage, and he tossed me the keys and said, "Let's go." So I went, "Oh, okay." So we went over there, and as we were walking to the car, I started asking him about it, like, what year is it? And because from a distance, when I first drove past it, like, I didn't realize what it was. So he starts telling me it's a 2020. I had it shipped up from Tennessee. It only had 7 miles on it when it was delivered. It is the 50th anniversary Z edition. There's one of only 50 in the entire world. And I'm just like, oh, like, this is a pretty special, rare car to this guy. And it hit me just at that moment that I haven't driven a manual transmission for about a year. So I'm like, okay. So I instantly got really, really, really nervous, because this car is obviously very special to John is his name, by the way. Thank you, John. So we get in, and the first couple of gears as we rolled out were a little rough as I was working the clutch, but we got up and I drove it around for about 10 or 15 minutes on some 2-lane roads, got it up to about 65 miles an hour. Tristan, where my parents live. So there's some windy roads in and around that area. So got to kind of put it through its paces a little bit. It was really fun. And he was telling me how much like Nissan runs in his family. He was telling me that, he and his brother both had Datsuns in high school, and they took their prom dates, to the prom in their Datsun 240s. And he had a 2003 350Z when his son was born. And like one of his son's first words besides mom and dad was Z. Like he'd point to the garage and say, Z, Z. And when he found out that, and he sold that, and his daily is actually a Jeep Wrangler. But so this is just his kind of passion project type of thing. It's not a project car, but it's his passion car, his fun car. And when he found out that they were making these 50th anniversary editions, which we have kind of poo-pooed on prior episodes, because all they really did to it was put 50 stickers on it. Like they didn't add any performance or anything like that. It was just a graphics package. Mm-hmm. But when he found out about it, he's like, I need this car. So he went through Nissan USA and he was trying to find one. He called the local dealership here and they said, hey, we can't get our hands on one. He kept digging, and he found a dealership in Tennessee that was advertising one. So he instantly called that guy, and the guy down in Tennessee said, well, I don't actually have it yet. Like, we're getting it, but it's not even in the country. It's still on the boat, on the shipping container coming over. And John just said, I'll wire you some money down right now. We'll discuss price later. I want it. It's mine. Do not put it on your lot. Like, he was so passionate and so obsessed with getting this car. And the cool thing about it for me is, like, we can say what we want about the 370Z and what Nissan's current state is, but hearing this story, like, to try to, I guess, I don't want to fall into a trap of complete hyperbole, but like hearing how passionate he is about it and knowing that there's people like him all over the place for any type of brand, like, it's kind of reinforces why we do this podcast. Like, we speak for these people, and the fact that, yes, it's a 370Z. It's not like a 1 of 100 made McLaren or Bugatti or something. But the fact that I got to drive a car that, you know, there's only 50 examples of in the entire world is really cool. I think.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like, not a McLaren. It's actually rarer.
Right. So thank you very much to John for letting me do that, and really for sharing the story. Like, the drive was fun for a lot of reasons, but I think just hearing how passionate he is about the brand was the most fun thing about it. As far as actually driving the car, what I found was, even after my first couple runs through the gears, like first, second, third, and up through, like, anytime we'd come to a stop sign and I have to get back down into first, like, pushing into first was like super tough. Like, it was a hard gate to get through. Like, there was a gatekeeper there, and you really had to persuade your way into first gear. But after that, like, it drove pretty nice. Like, coming from a guy who drives trucks, or a pickup truck, when he does get out and drive, like, awesome, responsive. It was a lot of feel to it. It's a 330 horsepower 2-seater car, so it's got a lot of, as Tristan's grandmother puts it, pep. Yeah, I had a good time with it. The interior was a Nissan interior, so nothing much to speak of there, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really cool opportunity, and just as kind of a passing joke for him to actually take me up on it and let me drive what he, you know, essentially is his baby outside of his actual kids. Like, that was really cool of him. So I was really stoked.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it speaks to, like, the differences in taste, and that's not like a derogatory thing. Like, things that really interest some people don't interest others, and it's kind of nice to hear other people get excited about what they like, even if it's not something you like. I've had a few other experiences like that in my life, where someone gets to do something or buy something or go somewhere that's like been a lifelong goal or dream or something they hadn't ever even thought of. You know, because I'm sure this, you know, this car, he'd probably always been like, well, I could buy a 370Z and, like, you know, just replace the 350, no big deal. But he hadn't done it because there wasn't anything special enough. And then this car comes along and he finally gets to buy another one. You know, I don't want to tell his story for him or assume anything, but, like, you know, that kind of seems what it sounds like. And those kind of stories are always kind of fun to listen to. They kind of get me thinking, and this might be, you know, another segment of an episode or whatever, but, you know, what kind of car would have to be made to have you wire somebody money sight unseen before the car even really exists, you know?
Right.
My wheels were spinning right away.
Exactly. That's actually a really good point. And he was telling me too that when, you know, he was so eager to get this car and he was so willing to essentially open his pocketbook for it, that the dealer, the salesman, instantly went to upsell. They're like, well, if he's willing to do this, like, so he's like, these guys were trying to, like, I told him I'm going to give him money sight unseen for a 370Z. And instead of just saying, okay, and trying to make that deal, they tried to upsell him to a GTR. They're like, well, we're going to do this. How about another $300,000 for one of these?
Stop. that they're not even freaking Nissan, man. I mean, we're in a high volume car area overall, right? So, like most of our dealerships around here get good stuff. I mean, our Hyundai dealership is always like one of the top dealerships to get ends. I mean, they've had ends on the lots, and even our Kia dealership always has Stingers, and we get all the cool stuff except for
Honda dealer. Yeah, Honda dealers have Type R's, and
always. Yeah, it's just, and so to have them then upsell him to a car that was probably at that time, so that it was a 2020, so it would have been what 110 or 115,000 up from 30. No, knock that shit off.
Make that step real quick. It's not even like a different trim package. Like for an extra $2,000, you can get this. It's like for an extra 150,000, you can get this.
Stupid.
Crazy upsell. But anyway, nonetheless, it was a really cool 15-20 minutes to hear his story about the brand and why it means so much, and to drive a car like that. So thank you so much, John. Is there Tristan, you got anything before we dive into this?
No, not really.
All right.
I had seen the straight six rear wheel drive Mazda story, and BMW fighter jumped to mind, but there's nothing else that I'm interested in, at least happening right now.
No.
All right then. Fair enough. So, folks, we're going to get into tonight's main topic, which is we are going to be commissioner for a day for all the major racing series, but we're going to do that right after this break. Hey, we're back, folks, and we're about to get into tonight's main topic. But before we do, first, we'd like to remind you how to get a hold of us if you feel so inclined. To start with, we have our very own website. It is checkenginepodcast.com, and we have an email address associated with that website. It is inbox@checkenginepodcast.com, because we are so infinitely creative. We're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Check Engine Podcast. Andrew is patrolling the Twitters on our behalf. And Andrew, where can they find us on Twitter?
At Check Engine Pod.
And Tristan, we put up pictures from time to time on Instagram, do we not?
Occasionally, from time to time. Yes, we do.
And where can they find us if they'd like to see those pictures?
At Check Engine Pod.
So there you have it, folks. Be sure to like, follow, share, post, DM, reach out to us how and when you can. You can ask us questions to answer on the air. You can let us know what topics or segments you like or you dislike. Give us ideas for episodes in case we run out. However you want to communicate, we look forward to hearing from you. So thank you in advance. Now, to get back to the show, Andrew, tee up our commissioner for a day exercise.
Well, as I mentioned before, there's been a lot of chatter about what would need to happen for the rest of this year to get as much racing in as possible. And as a result of that, ideas have kind of been thrown about with reckless abandon, rumors, hearsay. And some of the stuff sounds really cool. So I think we should start with the one that will almost certainly be the shortest. So if each of us were to be the commissioner of Formula One, what work would you be doing during this break to come out of it with F1 positioned to be as good as it can be? And maybe some of it will be the same, but I think Formula One is the most difficult, simply because it's all so hopeless. I thought about how I would improve F1 the most out of all of them. And I just don't know, because they've done a really, really good job of setting up F1 to be so top heavy. No matter what, no matter reg changes, no matter anything else, there's always going to be maybe two teams at the top at most. And while that's not exciting, it is kind of F1's thing. So, I mean, outside of finding new ways to drive engagement in America, there's not a whole lot they can do. But maybe, I mean, is it obviously at this point, it's utterly insane to say that they need to add more American races. And it's doubly insane to say something like F1 at Indy. However, I mean, that would actually be kind of cool. F1 at Indy.
They've done it before.
Done.
They have done it before.
I mean, bring that back if they're going to, because tied to the IndyCar one, spoiler alert, one of the things IndyCar is considering or may actually do is run Indy twice. Were they going to start and finish with it?
So, well, they run, if the schedule were normal, they'd open the month of May with a Grand Prix style, a road course race on the old F1 road course, and then they end the month of May with the 500. So there's been talks of maybe instead of opening the month of May with that road course race, maybe that's where you end the season. So you have the Indy 500 in May, which is like the pinnacle of pretty much all motorsport, and then you can crown your champion at that hallowed ground, so to speak, at Indianapolis. So there's been talk of doing that as essentially just like moving that race from beginning of May until end of September, early October. So I don't know how much I really agree with it, to be honest with you. I kind of like, personally, I kind of like having everything kind of grouped together in May. Like the month of May is Indianapolis month. Like the rest of the year be damned. When that calendar turns over, it's Indianapolis time. Like that's it. No questions asked. And that's just my personal opinion. So, but we're trailing off topic on F1 though. So,
right. Yeah. But I mean, I think that if they were to if they want to get American eyes on F1, just like you said, Nick, I mean, there's no more hype than Americans going to Indy for the Indy 500. And listen, maybe they take the next step and they don't do the road course. Maybe they do the oval. I mean, let's get really nuts here. Let's put F1 cars on the oval.
Yeah, we'll get to my things later, but that ties into something that I was working on as well. So I would be all for that.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to jump in. That's literally all I have. I have no more for F1. I think their digital ventures are as boring as the on-track product. I think I think their drivers are so isolated from their real personalities that they're boring to watch even during this downtime. And there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah, and that was part of my push for F1. F1 was also my smallest. Was I think to reinvigorate interest in the sport, at least in the United States. I think they would have to be willing to do something that I don't know if they're capable of. I think there's been this push for F1 to be, because I saw it when I was there. I'm sure you probably did as well. When you went to Europe, Andrew, like so many people love F1, and it's like their little flavor of the high life. It's like my host brother in the exchange program, his dad was like a car mechanic, but had a room full of Ferrari merch and like watched F1 religiously. And so I don't know if they'd be willing to take my suggestion and kind of miss out on that like appeal of how supposedly highbrow F1 is. But my thought for F1 was actually move a little bit. I kind of have a summary talking point for each of these leagues, and mine for F1 was actually move a little bit down market and like
how?
Go do a double header with IMSA, or not IMSA, but like sorry, WEC, ACO, whatever. We will run F1 cars at Le Mans during the Le Mans weekend. Like
Ooh.
start comparing these cars to other cars, and you might actually get interest. Yeah, run them at Indy, which I don't know if IndyCar would even want that. Like, here, let's put these IndyCar, up against these F1 cars, not in a direct race, although you could do multi-class racing if you wanted to. I don't know.
Oh boy.
But yeah, right.
Gross.
But like,
Gross.
but like, put them in places where they're uncomfortable. So stick a bunch of F1 cars on the oval at Talladega. Like,
Wow.
stupid stuff.
I think they would. I think the drivers would pass out from the G-forces.
There are fighter pilot suits for that type of thing. They'll be okay.
Freak.
That was my whole my whole summary. My whole summary was just to like move it alongside other motorsport, because it has been for so long. It's been on its own, and for a lot of people that's unappealing, and they're all on this same kind of exquisitely manicured road course that it doesn't seem real. Like when they race places, like Andrew, you mentioned that like their online product isn't any more exciting than their in-person product, because their in-person product seems like a simulation anyway.
Yep. During an active race, it looks like qualifying.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because of the regulations, and like the cars are designed right. The way they're designed right now, they can't follow closely to one another. Like you can't get close enough to like your car will just, the handling will go away when you get close enough to pass someone. So, and then the tires wear out. So there's this trickle down effect where really the guys are driving at like 85%, 75 to 85% at a safe distance from one another, just hoping to gain time on in and out laps around pit stops, which not fun for a spectator. Qualifying is amazing for Formula One because then you get to see them at their absolute limit, which just defies all science and physics. But yeah, to Tristan's point, I think that the moving down market, I have a little bit, it's kind of similar, I guess. It is that accessibility piece. Andrew, you mentioned that the drivers are isolated. How about a fan grid walk at a Formula One race?
Oh, no touchy.
The cars are roped off anyway, and the teams, you're standing around like there's an army of men standing around the car. They're not going to get close enough to touch, but the drivers are on the grid too. So what if you're walking down the grid and you just happen to get a selfie with Lewis Hamilton 2 minutes before he steps into his car at Silverstone? Like, how cool would that be?
I wonder if he would even do that. I wonder if he'd even do it.
They're on the grid.
Right.
They're there. That's not like they're off hiding somewhere. You see the reception, like I've seen footage of Hamilton doing it, especially Silverstone, which is his home Grand Prix. He's Jesus in England, basically. So after he wins, he goes out to the stands and people are passing him note cards, or they're throwing hats over the fence that he signs and throws back over to people. And it could happen in Italy with the Ferrari drivers. It could imagine, Max Verstappen has got the biggest following almost of any driver, maybe outside of Hamilton right now. Like you see the sea of orange every race around the world that Formula One goes. Why can't fans on Friday and Saturday as part of their tickets already expensive enough? Like if you've looked up weekend tickets to Formula One races, they are astronomically expensive. So it's not going to lose the exclusivity of it. Like there's only going to be a certain part of your market that's going to be able to get there. So why not just give them more value for that dollar that they're paying so dearly for? Like included with that is grid walk. Included with that is paddock access on Friday and Saturday during practice. Like, why not? What's like, I don't understand what's holding them back from that. And then the other thing, Andrew, you mentioned like there's really good 2, maybe 3 teams at the top. And they've positioned them, Formula One has positioned themselves that way. How they announced that cost cap that's coming. How about a real cost cap? Because we kind of poked holes in all that. Like there's a cost cap, except for things that are deemed not engineering, or except for the salary of your driver. It's like, okay, well, I can take something that's not supposed to be engineering, but throw $15 million at Lewis Hamilton to have him come drive my car. So how about a real cost cap? We're all in salaries of drivers, marketing activities, engineering and R&D, travel, lodging is one lump sum for the same for every single team. No stupid legacy bonus. Like Ferrari gets an extra 7-8 figures per year from Formula One just because they've been there for 70 years. That's like a legacy thing that they get a kicker on. Like, why? Like, I don't understand. Just it's like a participation trophy for Ferrari because they flex their muscle and it's like, well, if we don't get it, we're going to go home. Fine. We've got 9 other teams and 18 other cars. Like, play by everybody's rules. So an actual cost cap. Now, just say all in. I'm just going to throw a number out there for an example. All in, no one can spend more than $150 million per year on everything: driver, team, engineers, crew, lodging. So they can choose where to spend that money, and within the regulations, they can choose where to pump R&D dollars. So there might still be teams finding advantages technically. So you might still have the haves and have-nots, but you're not going to have that one team that can afford to run their factory 24/7, 365 with 4 shifts of engineers doing simulations when other teams can't, because they're just not going to be able to afford to do that. Everyone's going to have to work in a tighter box. So a real cost cap and driver accessibility, I think, fixes F1.
That would be interesting, especially because I wonder, I mean, it's so hard to tell, like, would that impact, I mean, in terms of prestige in the auto world, I mean, I could be totally wrong about this because, you know, obviously the, all of the pimping out of past drivers and all that stuff in F1 is so prevalent, but the technology is supposed to be the thing, right? And functionally what happens is those top 2 spenders, or 3, if you count, you know, Red Bull or whoever the third place team is that year. I mean, theoretically, they're spending all this money to develop technology that somehow trickles down into road cars, whether it's hybrid tech or it's so hard to tell with F1. They're put on this pedestal as the premier technology in racing, but so hard to tell if any of that ever flips back into the real world. You know what I mean? Like, no,
right.
There's no DRS
and really what
in your car.
Yeah. And really what, 2 things there. One, I don't think it's going to affect their position as the exclusive. Like they're so far ahead. No one, even with a cost cap that's cutting down their spending maybe in half, nobody else outside of maybe like Toyota in the WEC with their hybrid prototypes are spending anywhere close to that anyway. So they're so exclusive by such a long gap that they can afford to come down and still maintain that position. And really what's going to happen as they develop that technology, it's just going to slow down the speed. Or maybe if they go down the wrong technological path, they're not going to have the resources to make a quick turn.
Yeah, just to start over on drop 300 million's worth of research and work and start over.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Well, then there's, there's always the mystery of, like Ferrari's reaction to the Mercedes adjustable toe. They're like, oh, but first they said, that's illegal. Then they said, well, we could have done it too. And it's like, there's such a disconnect. I love everything. I love all of your suggestions, Nick, but there's such a disconnect between the reality of F1 and what is said about F1 that It's so hard to tell where the best impact would be made.
Right. 100% agree. Like there's Formula One is as far disconnected from reality as Hollywood is. Like, it is crazy.
Yeah, 100%. Wow. So we spent way longer on that than I thought we would.
Okay, so what's the next series we're gonna fix?
I'm gonna put out there that I think we should end with IMSA because that's kind of like our group favorite.
Okay, I'm down with that.
Yeah, I think so. Let's go to the other end of the perceived spectrum and go to NASCAR.
So I'll just kick it off here. Like, my take on NASCAR is that I'm actually giving credit to their new regime, basically since like Monster isn't the title sponsor anymore of the Cup Series, but since they came in a couple of years ago, they have been going out on a limb and trying new things. Like they've the big schedule shakeup that would have taken place this year if it weren't for COVID. The road course at Charlotte, the Roval, that was a big hit. The stage racing thing, like they're trying new things to try to maintain engagement, which is cool. The thing I would change about NASCAR is we still need more track variety. Like outside of Charlotte, which is the team's home base, Daytona, which is, well, it's Daytona, and maybe a couple of the short tracks like Bristol, you don't need to race twice anywhere else. Like you don't need to race twice in New Hampshire. You don't need to race twice in Kansas. You don't, as cool as Las Vegas is for entertaining sponsors, you really don't need 2 races in Las Vegas. It's a 36 race schedule. Yeah. And they go to 18 tracks or 19 tracks. They just do a lot of them twice. Where in the meantime, there's tracks that, the trucks and the Xfinity series are running on that Cup doesn't. So, the trucks run at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Why not run the Cup cars up there? Ooh. That's another road course.
That would be so good. Power track.
Xfinity
just total.
Yeah. Power track. Exactly. Xfinity runs at both Road America and Mid Ohio. Why doesn't Cup run there?
Mid Ohio with Cup cars would be sick.
Yes. That's so tight and compact.
Wreckosaurus.
Oh, that'd be awful. It'd be a shit show, but it'd be entertaining.
It would be.
Both Cup not Cup, Xfinity and trucks run at Iowa Speedway, which is middle of nowhere. Granted, it's Iowa, but it's a 7/8 mile high banked oval that's unlike anything they run on. Add a little spice to it. Let's put Cup there too. St. Louis has a 1.2-ish mile egg-shaped oval where like one end is a hairpin and the other end is a real wide sweeping corner with curbs on the inside, like a road course. Trucks run there, but Xfinity and Cup don't. Like, why don't we align these schedules more to bring some more variety into the Cup side? And then how about changing some formatting a little bit? If you go to a local short track to see, like, around here we've got Slinger or Jefferson, their format for their premier class, the late model, the super late model classes, just like it is on dirt tracks, is a heat race format. So why not, after qualifying, instead of running like at Bristol, you run a 500 lap race on a half-mile circuit? How about you split them up into 2 heats, 2 50-lap heats, maybe a last chance qualifier for folks who didn't do so good in the heats, that's like 20 laps, and then a 200-lap feature. Like, make it, if you're running on a short track, make it like a short track format. It's just something to change up the regular cadence and keep the teams and the fans and the drivers on their toes. When we were talking about, when I think I wrote the blog about like what makes a great race, a lot of it is uncertainty. Like, there's no uncertainty in Formula One. You go to a Formula One race, you're going to watch Lewis Hamilton win. That doesn't make for a good race. The reason why people flock to Talladegas and Daytonas is because of that drafting and that pack racing, the big one as it is, like the big race. You don't know who's going to come out on top. Like, anybody could win that thing. So let's change up the formats to keep everybody on their toes and keep people guessing. That could drum up that interest.
Yeah, definitely. I love all of that. I love it all. The one other thing. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Tris.
Yeah, I'm all about that. I mean, I think also there's like I think something that I was looking at too is maybe it would be a one-off, and not something probably that would happen often, but like bring them to Europe.
Yeah.
Oof. Where would you go?
Because I think
Yeah, what track would you take them to?
what jumped to mind first was Monza.
Power
Okay.
track.
Well, it is. I mean, it's often classified as one of the fastest tracks in Europe, like in the world, actually. Sadly, it was, it's not safe at the moment, so it's not open. But something like that would be excellent, I think. Even if all it's for is like when they play NFL games in London, it's for the exactly one stadium full worth of American football fans in all of Europe. And the Americans who go there to see their sport happen in Europe, and the people who tune in on TV, even if that's all it's for, even if it doesn't draw half the continent, I think it would be something that would bring some interest back, because I think even when you say, like, okay, yeah, they're running at road courses in, Xfinity and the trucks, even stuff like, the Roval, it's like, okay, sure, but they're all these relatively standard American racetracks. Like, they're not even the fun ones. They're not Laguna Seca. They're not Watkins Glen all the time. They're not Canadian Tire. They're not, the interesting tracks that kind of, even Europeans go, oh yeah, that's actually a really good racetrack,
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it would be interesting to send them there and just see what happens. It could be a huge waste of time, but that was the first thing that popped into mind, is like, okay, get NASCAR out of America, because I drew those parallels to NFL football, and I was like, and see what happens.
I've been thinking on
That's
this as you've been talking about it. It's an interesting idea. I'm going to propose a different track, however.
Well, yeah, because Monza's closed.
Well, this doesn't have to be
that layout jumped to mind.
Right. This doesn't have to be this year, but like Monza would be a good one. But I think because of the layout and where it's located, if we're talking about a one-time shot, I'm going to propose they do it at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. It is centrally located on the continent. It is, I think, the shortest track on the F1 calendar. It's just a hair over 2 miles. And if you look at the layout, it's also relatively simple. Because when NASCAR does a road course, for instance, when they do Watkins Glen, they don't do the boot like IMSA and IndyCar does. They cut that part out. When they do Sonoma, they don't do the big carousel in the middle. They cut that part out. So they'll do road courses, but they do rather simple layouts, which makes Mid-Ohio sound staggering to me. So
right.
if you Google the track map for the Red Bull Ring in Austria, fairly simple. There's a lot. It's Austria, so there's a ton of elevation change, which is a challenge. But the track itself is kind of down in a bowl, and because it's so short, with all the grandstands around the outside, you have really good visibility to well over half the track from anywhere you sit. So,
yeah, and one that was also on my backup list, funny with the similar name, was the Hockenheim Ring.
Yes.
But yeah, that was my big push for NASCAR, was that. And then also, I feel like a lot of it would depend on, are we just talking about, recovery from this year, or are we talking about just interesting things to move forward? Because I was looking at, tickets, and they're just so shockingly expensive, especially for like whole weekends
For a NASCAR race?
Yeah,
Yes.
like especially the big ones.
Yep.
And like I know they're the big ones, and for the whateverth consecutive year, they they sell out every year. And maybe some of the big ones, Daytona, Talladega, whatever, that they would probably be exempt from having to do this. It would be like saying, Super Bowl tickets need to be cheaper. Well, they're going to sell them out anyway. You know, but the other ones like Iowa or whatever, I think it would be interesting to do, even if it's not running at the same time. I think it would be interesting to do like cross promotion with different series, where it's like you get
Totally.
2 week, like 2 weekends of tickets. It's like, I don't know what a good example. As I said, Iowa, I don't know if that would be the best example because I don't have all the schedules in my head like you do, Nick. But like a track where IndyCar and NASCAR run, or NASCAR and because they're under the same corporate roof, NASCAR and IMSA, um, come and see the stock cars one weekend, come and see IMSA another weekend, buy your tickets as a package, and you get a deal and some memorabilia or something to draw more interest.
Totally. I think Texas Motor Speedway is a perfect one for that because IndyCar and NASCAR both run there. NASCAR runs first. They run like April, where IndyCar runs in June. Hey, buy your NASCAR ticket. Here's this deal. You get your IndyCar ticket for $10, or you get it for free or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. And then on the back end, obviously they're splitting everything, but
right.
And that would be the same for IMSA. Like try that. That would be something from basically the same corporate entity you could do to, work some life into both of those. Would be like get some of that massive NASCAR crowd and say like, here, try this. We think you might like it. With some of the IMSA stuff, for lack of a better phrase, and just bundle those tickets and some piece of merchandise or something else and make it a package. That was also something that I thought for because I was looking at various websites for tickets, and it was like, here's your ticket, and the other thing you can buy is like maybe like a driver autograph session. When you look at the IMSA tickets, it's like, here's one with the hospitality option. Here's one where you get go-karting. Here's one where you get, a ride-along lap. Like there's all sorts of different things you can buy. With NASCAR, it's just a ticket. And I think that may have been enough and might still be enough for NASCAR, but I think you could use NASCAR to, prop up IMSA and etc. But that was the other thing that was floating through my mind. I didn't develop a strong enough idea because I wasn't sure of schedules and I didn't have enough time to build the Excel sheet to compare them all.
I got it all right in my old noggin, man. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah, he does. It's all fun and fantasy, but I love all of those ideas. And in addition to all of them, in addition, here's the number one thing that I think NASCAR needs to do. That whatever day it is that California opens, whatever day it is that you can move completely freely in LA, the first thing that NASCAR needs to do, they need to pack up a couple of the, cars. They don't have to be branded or anything, just a couple chassis, working chassis. They need to put them on a trailer and they need to drive them to the FaZe Clan house, which is in LA. FaZe is a gaming clan with a bunch of Twitch personalities. They're one of the highest grossing clans every year. They need to park that trailer directly in front of the FaZe Clan house. And they need to force FaZe Clan to help them launch a full-time online iRacing NASCAR series. They need to do branded merch. They need to get the personalities streaming on Twitter. They need to, who knows, maybe this needs to become their B League. They need to make this a full-time thing because that's how good it is and that's how well it's working. And NASCAR, they have a golden egg here and they have no fucking idea what to do with it. You can see they don't know what to do. They're just going with whatever happens. And there's no one better at creating online personalities in gaming than FaZe Clan. They're fantastic on YouTube. They're good on Twitch. The people who come up through them are some of the most streamed gamers. I mean, and Fortnite primarily, but also Dota. and they just know what they're doing. They know how to move. They need to get them on board.
Yeah, and that was something that I had lined up for kind of a summary piece.
Yep.
But we can talk about it now. I think all of these leagues need to have virtual racing in one form or another. I think some of the almost knocked my mic over. I think some of the bigger ones could use it as an actual part of the league, and some of the other smaller ones might just end up using it for promotional reasons or like additional content. And we can, go backwards. I think F1, I think we agreed it's boring already. Maybe they can just skip it. NASCAR, yep. I think has, as you mentioned, a golden goose. And, they despite some hiccups, it's something that has been very well received, very well watched, and something that has been moved into easily by their fan base. And I think that's just more hours of content with advertisements on it. Like, I think that's a no-brainer for NASCAR. And we can touch on the rest of them as we go.
Yeah. And I'm gonna jump on this bandwagon and add this to it. I would yes, Andrew, you're absolutely right. They need to make this not just a COVID special thing. Like, they need to make this a recurring thing, and that's IMSA, and that's IndyCar, and that's NASCAR. My take on it is, let's run it in the off season. So let's have this pro invitational thing that's going on right now for NASCAR. Let's do that same thing between November and when they go back to Daytona in February. They can run like a 5-race series. It keeps 365 days a year engagement with the fan base. IndyCar would benefit from it greatly because their off season is horrendously long. And as we get into IndyCar specifically, I'll touch more on that. But let's have the pro invitational, whatever you want to call it, the actual drivers doing virtual racing. And how about this? Let's open up qualifiers to other sim racers to get into those races. Like, hold 2 or 3 provisional spots on every one of those grids. And the day before, let's have sim racers go do it. And then the winners, or the top 3 or 5 or whatever that is, you get in the next day to race against the pros, against the heroes you watch on TV or you buy the ticket to go see. Let's get you on the same track with them.
Definitely off-season stuff for sure. But I think specifically in the case of NASCAR, they have such a moment here that they don't even realize because of the progression of NASCAR through the 90s, right? There are younger kids or, people like Josh Bilicki's age who are into NASCAR. They know about NASCAR. They know the drivers, and they also know technology. So the difference is, when you look at Josh in iRacing versus Josh in a real car, he just so happens to be faster and more consistent in iRacing. There's no reason why that couldn't be basically more or less a career path for him, because he's under the umbrella of NASCAR. He's a good driver, and he's doing better in something that should be, and is for the moment, the main focus of the whole sport. There's no reason that needs to disappear when this comes back. NASCAR can pull a younger audience in by learning from a FaZe Clan or a different group or anyone who knows how to create internet personalities and gaming personalities and make them international superstars. They need to keep this going full time. It will never replace the real racing. But what it will do is add a whole new vector to hook new fans, younger fans, and people who, kids essentially who watch YouTube and love these YouTube personalities. It'll teach them to enjoy NASCAR as a sport.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it opens up a potentially, like, obviously everybody's still focusing, but it's win-loss focusing, not life-death focusing. Like, you could crash the car. I think it would open up a potentially different set of personalities if, you were to have, because it's far easier to mount it to the cage of a sim versus inside a NASCAR that's vibrating and everything else, get these people on camera with their feeds, helmets off, because they don't need a helmet, they're racing in a not real car. Get hands on with these people, helmet off, talking, reacting to stuff. I think that would add a whole nother layer to the content beyond just more visible racing.
And the overall point, Andrew, that you right.
Yes.
The overall point that you hit on, that's the perfect one, Andrew, is the younger audience. We already talked about it before. I think you yourself, Andrew, said it. How many people got into car culture because of Gran Turismo?
Mm-hmm.
So how many young kids who are quote unquote, well, they're just interested in playing video games or watching people play video games. Well, then hit them where they are. Like if that's what they're doing,
exactly,
get in front of them there. And maybe now, hey, I watched Joey Logano win at, this iRacing, this virtual race. Oh, wait, NASCAR comes to that track that's 2 hours away. Dad, can we go see Joey Logano drive for real? Like, let it bubble up that way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a kid in Iowa, and in the middle of Iowa, but suddenly the NASCAR Cup cars are coming to mid Iowa with all the stars. You saw them race on iRacing. You saw them do it in the off season, or saw a kid work his way up from iRacing into the Cup Series, and that's how you grow fans. This is working so well for them. It's going to be such a bummer if they fuck it up when they go back to real racing. It's going to be such a bummer.
It is.
So do we want to bounce on over to IndyCar?
Yeah. I think Indy's an interesting case. And maybe, Nick, you can tell me if I'm disrespecting IndyCar by suggesting this, but in my mind, what IndyCar needs to do functionally to get, for example, my attention, they need to do more. They need to do as much as they can with other race series. And I think that's something that's going to become a necessity as racing leagues are going to have to eventually merge audiences. And I think in IndyCar, to my eyes, they're in a tricky place. They do road courses, but they sort of have the quote unquote stock car aesthetic in that, chassis and engines get kind of bolted together. I want to see more IndyCar with other stuff. I was super excited for Detroit, and obviously we're not going to get a chance to go, which is a bummer, but I wanted to feel that atmosphere. I wanted to know how that works. Plus, I think if you got the right weekend, if you got the right course, a double headliner of an IndyCar race and a Cup car race would be unbeatable attendance.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe even too much. But
right.
And that was along the line, and that's along the lines of what I was thinking, Andrew. One of two options. I think it would be fun, especially when you consider, I know we're kind of answering two questions, now and in the future. Something that might be Rona special is a doubleheader weekend where you run the road course and the oval in various locations that have both. So run the same course that IMSA runs in Daytona and run the oval on the same weekend with the same car, and you get one night to tweak your chassis changes, do your best.
NASCAR is actually to an extent kind of sort of doing that next year.
Nice. I would watch that.
the first race of NASCAR season is always like a little mini all-star race. It's called Busch Beer sponsors it. So it's like the Busch Clash. And what it is, anybody who has either won that race before is like grandfathered in, or anybody who has qualified on pole the year before, it's like an invite-only race. It's like a sprint race. It's like 60 laps at Daytona, no points, just a big check for the winner. But they run it up until 2020 like the Daytona 500, the restrictor plate on the big oval. Next year, the Busch Clash is going to be on the 24 Hours of Daytona road course with Cup cars. And then the very next day, the oval opens for practice and qualifying for the Daytona 500.
Wow. Yeah, and I would say make that part of the race schedule. Like,
yeah.
You know, and that can be that could be NASCAR, it could be NASCAR, it could be IndyCar. You know, I guess we could retroactively go back from IndyCar to NASCAR and talk about that. Like, I think especially the IndyCars where they have relatively complete road course setups that actually work really well, and you know, oval setups that work really well. I think having them have to utilize both in a weekend and get those, you know, whatever's first, obviously you're going to have the most time to get dialed in unless you limit, you know, practice and setup time beforehand. But then you got to make that change over to the other setup. And I think that's interesting to me, watching them be nimble, because I think it would highlight the interest that's there for the sport. Like, sure, on very rare occasions, Cup cars, Xfinity cars, etc., run on road courses, and it's like, haha, play yakety sax, watch them slide all over the place. They're bad at this, you know. Right, and it's a novelty. But I think one of the strengths of IndyCar that I don't think it's talked about enough is that these cars are potentially excellent oval racers and excellent road course racers in their own right. You know, and I think that utilizing both of those in a weekend, saying, hey, look what we can do, I think there'd be some value in that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I love that.
That's an awesome idea. I mean, it is. That's what IndyCar, a lot of times, that not just the speed, because, you know, 230 plus at Indianapolis, but like
quite fast,
so fast. But the versatility, they say all the time, we have the most versatile schedule. To win our championship, you have to be an all-round driver. You've got to be able to win on an oval. You've got to be able to win on a street course, and blah, blah, blah. Well, how about Charlotte, where, like you said, one day they run the Roval like NASCAR does, and then they take those barricades out overnight, and the next day you run the oval. You've got the cars to do it, so you've got the drivers, per se, as you proclaim, that can do it. So let's do it.
That would be really fun.
I love it. I love it.
You know, that's one of the most interesting things about IndyCar. As I was thinking about it, there's so much that's compelling about IndyCar, whether it's driver personalities, or even I even kind of like the drop in, drop out nature of the season. You know what I mean? Where the bigger races attract more cars, and they have so many things right, but I feel like I feel like it's hard to feature on anything else that's not the Indy 500. It just seems like a harder sell to me, and I can't explain that.
I think one of the reasons, and if I can just kind of jump in with my notes on IndyCar here, the biggest thing that they lack right now, and I'm going to qualify this by saying Captain Penske has purchased everything IndyCar here. So a lot of this stuff that I might bring up, odds are he's already thought of it and he's got a plan in place. So, or he's working on one. Like, so we'll see in the next couple of years what comes of this. IndyCar does a horrific job marketing their own drivers, where that's one of NASCAR's strengths. NASCAR, you know who Joey Logano is. You know who Kyle Busch is. You know who Jimmy Johnson is. Whether or not you watch every week or not, you see them on commercials. You see their pictures in gas stations. You see, you know, they're on Wheaties boxes in the grocery store, whatever. They market the people really well in NASCAR. They set up hero versus villain narratives. Kyle Busch is always the bad boy, blah, blah, blah. Joseph Newgarden is a 28-year-old American who has won multiple races, drives for the best team, has won 2 championships in IndyCar in 3 years, and nobody knows who the fuck he is. He is a good-looking, well-spoken, sponsored dream poster child, and nobody knows where it is. And this isn't just, like, I've looked. IndyCar doesn't share any driver's social media posts. Like, they don't. If Simon Pagenaud posts something on Instagram, IndyCar doesn't share it to their fan base. If Newgarden does something on Facebook, nobody shares it. Like Hinchcliffe is a personality, but he's done that himself. Like
Yeah, that's all. I was to say, the only one that pops to mind is Hinch, and it's because he does it himself.
IndyCar doesn't help at all. And this is a different type of like cross promotion. Like it's got to go beyond. How about, is Marco Andretti smarter than a fifth grader? Get him on a game show. IndyCar has invited NASCAR drivers during this virtual racing thing. Hey, come race with us. Have you seen an IndyCar driver run any of the NASCAR races? Cross promote.
Yeah.
Like get their name out there to other fans. It could be social. It could be, let's see. Like I said, the put them on game shows, make them guests on talk shows. Have Newgarden when he wins the championship, go sit down with like Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel or something. They don't do that. Like the season's over. And then again, the season is so short in comparison to others. Like Newgarden wins the championship in September. Nobody hears from him until March. Like
silence.
Just complete radio silence. It's ridiculous. They've got to do a better job, and they've got to like IndyCar markets they preach to the choir and then they call that a success. Like the Super Bowl was on NBC this past year. NBC also runs the Indy 500. They air it. They've got the contract for the next 10 years. Did you see a commercial or even like a ticker on the bottom of the screen, like an in-game graphic for the Indy 500?
No, but you saw infinite amounts of NASCAR.
You damn right you did. Daytona 500 everywhere. And it wasn't even broadcast on NBC. Fox had the Daytona 500. Oh, wait. No, did Fox? Right. Oh, Aikman did do it this year. I never mind. So it was the Fox team. So, but still, why doesn't IndyCar pay for a spot to do like a 15-second Indy 500 coming May to 100 and some million who are watching the Super Bowl? What they did do was a lot of local spots in Indianapolis. So any of the time I went to the local programming commercials in and around Indiana, where all the teams are and most of the fans are, they saw it. Well, yeah, they know. They live there.
Right. They already have their tickets.
Yeah, they bought already. So, like, they need a better marketing scheme, and they need to promote the drivers, and they also need to extend the season. They need to. It's tough to find races that work. It's tough to find promoters that want them because they're not NASCAR. Like it's tough to get a draw on IndyCar. There are some places where it works. Road America did it perfectly. You guys saw it when you were there. Road America is a packed house. Obviously, Indianapolis. You've got other spots. Mid-Ohio is a good example. Gateway, the oval I mentioned in St. Louis with the curbs on the inside. Like IndyCar runs there too, and they pack that place.
That's because St. Louis has no sports except for baseball.
That's true. Maybe there's
right. and hockey.
And hockey. The Blues just won the championship. But IndyCar does this thing where they're so afraid of football. Like, so they start in March, but they end in September because they don't want to compete with football. Well, guess what, man? You shouldn't be cross-shopping yourself with football because everything takes a hit when football starts. NASCAR takes a hit. Formula One takes a hit. You can't be afraid of your competition anymore. Like,
well, and also on top of that, almost everybody has a way to record or stream stuff now. So like Nick, let's say you can get the Chargers game. You'll watch the Chargers game and then go back and watch the recorded race, which counts. Anything with a DVR is tracking your watching habits. That counts for advertising. It counts for Nielsen ratings. Like, so they're not going to watch it live as it airs. They're going to watch it anyway if they're interested. And I think your point about marketing the drivers, Andrew, I think that's something that would I think fix your issue. Like, I think you're talking about like it's not. We'll get to this later. I think IMSA has a very strong brand association. I drive one of those. I want to see it on the racetrack. And I think NASCAR has brand affiliation, but also huge, Marvel Cinematic Universe class character development on these guys. And that's why they sell tickets to stuff because people want to see it. That's why people watch it on TV. I think if IndyCar was selling its drivers, because it's going to be hard to sell the cars. It's like, oh, here's the same chassis and different people make engines for it. That's not a big sell. But if you can sell, I think, a combination of how good the racing can be and the interesting cast of characters, then there's something that you'd want to feature as a track owner, as a promoter, etc.
And you've got the drivers to fill the gaps. You know, you've got an opportunity here. Like I said, Newgarden, this all-American, blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid. He drives for Penske, which runs Chevy. And then you've got Alexander Rossi, who is an absolute assassin. Like, he doesn't just want to beat you. He wants to lap the field and make you go home and cry. He does not care. He is a robot. He is a machine, and he's so good. Well, guess what? He drives for Andretti, rival team to Penske. He drives for Honda, rival team for Chevy. The storyline is sitting right there. Two kids, late 20s. They're going to be around for 10 plus years. You've got your narrative, your Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt narrative that NASCAR capitalized on. Good versus evil. You know, Chevy versus Honda. Oh,
Superman versus the Terminator.
It's laying right at their feet, and they're not doing anything with it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned they're scared of football, which is definitely true. I also wonder how scared of NASCAR Cup IndyCar is, because I have this vision of like what a weekend IndyCar Cup at Sonoma would be. What a freaking weekend that would be.
Yep.
I mean,
I'd drive that far to go see it.
That would be something just totally unbelievable. And it would never happen. They just
nope.
It's never going to happen. They got to find a way. They got to stop running. Maybe that's what it is. They just got to stop running. They got to stand.
They've got to stop running, and I keep touching on it. They've got to extend the season. It's tough to find races, but they've got to, they've got to find a way to run this. They can't have a 6-month off season, especially if they're not marketing anything. Like they've got to start in February. They've got to run into at least October. They can't do this March to September thing and then call it good. Does that mean, like, look, you've got two of your best drivers, Will Power and Scott Dixon, Australia, New Zealand. They used to run down on Surfers Paradise. Maybe run the Indy. It'd be too tight, not Bathurst, but find another spot, maybe down in Australia for a race. Pato O'Ward is a great young Mexican driver. Market him, run in Mexico City. If you want to run into the cooler months, you've got to find these places that are going to be warmer. Like, you can't run at Road America in February. Just not going to happen. You might be able to. You never know. But like,
I would see. I got to in the snow race.
You've got to expand your horizons a little bit and try to make it work. Like I said, Mexico, maybe Australia. I know you got to find a promoter and the right thing to do, because it's an astronomical expense to basically move the entire series on shipping containers all the way around the world to do something like that for essentially a week. But if anyone can do it with all of his connections and all of his business acumen, Roger can find a way. Like, his group can find a way to do it. And they've got to, like, they run 17 races right now. I think you can bring it up to 20 real easy. Add a couple in February, add maybe one more in October. Now you cut 2 months off of that off-season time, and I think you're in a much better place.
Yeah, for sure. All right. The last one.
Last but not least.
Definitely not least. Although IMSA, I probably said I probably had the least to say about F1, and that turned into like the longest one. But I'm so happy with the trajectory of IMSA. The only thing I can think of is to add and continue to expand. I mean, they're doing interesting stuff with the digital aspect through the break here. And I think that maybe they're gaining enough momentum and traction where they could continue to horn in on, NASCAR events and IndyCar events. I don't know. I'm so happy with the direction they're heading. I don't really have much to add.
I have very little to add, but again, I said I kind of had a talking point for everybody. My summary point for IMSA is stay on the gas with the fan interactivity kind of stuff.
There is nobody better. There's absolutely nobody better.
That's a huge selling point. Like, Jessica's dad, was like, oh, you get to go in with the cars, like right there, and like, yeah, just go take a look. And he didn't even know that was possible. And it became his favorite thing. Like, he went with us, and he's like, yeah, this is fantastic, and like didn't even know about it. And I think that advertising that, pushing the grid walks, pushing the paddock access, and then using the digital side to run basically a feeder series, system race where, I think they can borrow Nissan's model for GT Academy and run an entire season with digital cars, and like the top 3 from that season get put on an IMSA sponsored, GTD car, or whatever you want to do. Awesome. With the IMSA paint, like the IMSA paint, and no sponsors other than series sponsors, and they run that car and see how they can do in real life. And
it doesn't even have to be GTD, Tristan. What about, just to get them used to the cars? What about putting them in Pilot Challenge in like a TCR car or like an Audi R8 GT4? Just and if let them make their bones there, and if they impress enough, then the big leagues will come calling. But at least giving them that opportunity, I agree.
Yep, and I think it's like, I think the marketing is right there. Like, fans of IMSA, are already such a big part of the sport. We want you to be even more a part of the sport and join us. And I think that's cool.
That's actually someone else has picked up, and it's not with IMSA. SRO, the series that runs like GT3, where Andrew, you and I got rained out. In Europe, they're doing that, and it's called the World's Fastest Gamer, and they promote it. I just think it's such a creative way to do it. So the guy, I forget his name already, which that's my fault because they made it known, who won the competition, is running the McLaren 720 GT3 in the SRO Europe side. So we're not going to see him in America. He's an English kid, and they're going to run him over there. But his car, like, it's a co-driver thing, but his car, the way they laid out the livery, they have a silhouette of, like, on the door. If you look at it from the side, it's like you're looking at a driver sitting in a seat from the side. So like you see kind of the knees arched up and stuff like that. But where the head is supposed to be is cut off because that's the window. So then so it's like the graphic runs right up to where this driver's helmet is going to be actually in the car. And then the caption underneath is, "This could be you."
Exactly.
Oh,
like that is so cool. I love it. Amazing. I was all about it. But IMSA needs to, yes, Tristan, IMSA needs to do that the same way.
Yeah, and there can be different scales of it. Like, at first it's like just open to the public. They post, the lap time. They still continue the digital racing in the off season or whatever, and they take those driver times, post them, and then just in open iRacing sessions, it's, anybody can come and race and try to put down times, and then they pull the best times. Those are all recorded, and then they start bracketing them and get a field,
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. That was my full idea. That was my one idea for IMSA, is take the fan interaction and turn it up to 11. Because I agree, Andrew. Like, I'm super happy with the trajectory. Like, things have improved. Like Nick, you and I, we were there when it was looking to be the dark years. Like, attendance was nil, and they merged, and it was like, oh god, is this even going to work? And then it's just been up, up, up since then. I'm super pumped for where it's going already, but I think that they can even turn that up to 11.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, you want to take a stab at it?
I mean, yeah.
Do we have
really
Andrew?
the
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, no. The only thing that the only thing that I was thinking about when Tristan was adding all of his ideas, which were all great. I'm wondering if, because I know that there's a certain amount of detail and information that the iRacing programmers use to put in every car, and I'm wondering if it wouldn't be possible for, whether it's technical data or, they actually go physically measure one of these production chassis. I think it may even be both. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be possible for IMSA to give them a hand in return for like officially sponsored races or a team car or something like that, and just make sure that in iRacing, anyone as part of this series can go and race any of the cars in the IMSA series. So whether, it's the Hyundai TCR, which isn't currently in there, or the Alpha TCR, any of those cars should be made available, I think, to people as sort of a co-branding opportunity. I really think that would increase the interest as well, to go along with a series where you can, or a car, team, or a chance to drive your way into professional racing as well. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah, you've got to put more cars on the sim. They don't have any of the prototypes. Like, they've been running the new DPI model for 3-4 years now, and they still on iRacing. It's that old Corvette C7 is the only prototype. Like, you gotta,
yeah. And again, I don't know exactly what they need, but I would love to see some sort of partnership between IMSA and iRacing to help with kind of what Tristan was laying out there, and to help iRacing in return by filling out their field a little more.
Yeah. My takes are, I'm in agreement with you guys. Like, Scott Atherton did such a phenomenal job since the merger as president, leading the series to where it is today. And now we're kind of in flux because, this is supposed to be John Doonan's first year at the helm, new president and all those types of things. So like, it's going to be tough to see really how good he's doing for a while. But words of caution that I have more than anything else. There are a lot of manufacturers who are weighing GTLM versus prototype, because with the new prototype regulations for DPI that are supposed to come out, I think in 2022, the ACO and WEC are going to adopt the same rules. So now you develop one car as a manufacturer and you can run Daytona and Le Mans. So there's a lot of these manufacturers are going to essentially weigh the option. Do we want to run GTE, like where the Corvette C8s are? Or do we want to run prototype? Not both. Ford already backed out of the GT Le Mans category. Porsche, I think it was Porsche. No, not Porsche. BMW ran in the WEC for 1 year, backed out. They're still here in America, but that's it. Like, that GTLM class / GTE class in Europe is getting very, very slim, and it's kind of precarious right now, depending on who decides to jump ship for the prototypes. So there may not be a class to go to unless they update that structure. Maybe, make the GTLM cars a Pro-Am category and not just professional or something like that, where, like some rich SOB who can buy a used one can get in and run those type of equipment too, just to try to boost the car count or something like that. It's just I would not be surprised at all within like 3 or 4 years if IMSA turned into a 3-class series, because it's just not going to be enough to run that GTLM category.
And that might not be the worst thing in the world either. To my mind, or at least what I'm hoping they're doing, is kind of adopting a little bit of a wait and see throughout this, what would have hopefully been the 2020 season, to kind of determine, to let that thing in Europe shake out and see what manufacturers cling to or what they want to do. Because the last time they talked about these classes, the hybrid requirement was at times being demanded by manufacturers and abhorred by manufacturers. So what I was hoping IMSA was doing was just kind of seeing what came out on top and then going with that as their class.
Yeah. So they announced, I think at the 24, the Rolex, a convergence. So like, they're not waiting to see what Europe does anymore. Like, it's what Europe is going to adopt whatever it is that IMSA decides for that hybridization.
Gotcha.
So like IMSA is leading that. So this is like kind of recent events where it's like, okay, now these manufacturers are like, well, why am I pumping, a few $1 million into this GTLM car where I could pump in that same amount of money, and now I'm racing for an overall win at both Daytona and Le Mans, not just a class win. Like, now I'm on the top of the top step, So,
yeah,
it's just kind of it's a period that's in flux for that category. So, it's yes, I'm kind of wait and see on it, and it's no real way to improve. It's just word of caution: be very careful how you organize your class structure in the next 2 or 3 years if you want to maintain car count. That's all I'm saying.
And that's something that we're going to have to wait and see.
What was that, Andrew? You kind of cut out. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. And like Tristan said, just keep your foot on the gas with everything.
Oh, totally. Totally. They have a perfect schedule. They run all the best racetracks. They have a perfect mix of endurance versus sprint. Like, the date equity is huge for them. Like, they've got the same races at the same time for the last 4 or 5 years. We know Road America's first weekend in August, right? We don't need to look at a calendar for that. We just plan around going to Road America the first weekend in August for IMSA, because that's how it's been for a decade. Like, they're doing pretty much everything right. I mean, here's one minor thing. They got to make the numbers bigger on the side of the car. The number plates are too tiny.
Yeah.
And we noticed
actually true.
And we noticed that when we went to the NASCAR race, and you could read from turn 5, you could read someone's number in turn 14. But yet in IMSA, when they're right in front of you, you can't read the number. You don't know who is who. So definitely make the numbers bigger. Anybody have anything else?
No,
I don't think so.
I think we successfully saved all of the racing series.
They'll thank us later. They'll go to inbox@checkenginepodcast.com and write us very heartfelt thank you letters.
That's right.
Welp, if no one has anything else, let's get you out of here, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate you listening. Obviously, like we mentioned, we don't want you just to listen. We want to interact with you. So we already mentioned how you can find us online and on all the socials. So let us know what you think about this episode. Give us your ideas. How would you fix your favorite series to sustain them in the future? We want to hear from you. In addition, be sure to, if you get a chance, to leave us a review, preferably a good one, and or hit that subscribe button. It's free. All that's going to happen is you'll get notified of any new content we put out, like this episode here you're listening to. No harm, no foul. And it helps us out with that, as Tristan calls it, the big podcast algorithm in the sky. If you're really into what we're doing and you would like to support us further, like monetarily, thank you in advance, you have two options to do that. You can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/checkenginepodcast, or at our homepage at anchor.fm/checkenginepodcast. You'll see right there real big towards the top a support button. You can just click there to get started. Nothing that is put into those funds comes back to our pockets. It is all put towards making this podcast a better experience for you, the listener. So thank you in advance there. Guys, do you have any extra special thank yous before we get out of here?
Well, kind of the opposite of what Tristan saw today. My wife and I also went to the grocery store, and I would like to thank everyone except for one person for doing really, really good jobs at social distancing, except for that we went to Aldi. And so we were like packing up our groceries on the thing, and the whole thing was open. And so one guy just came up right next to me and started packing his groceries. So thank you to everyone except that guy. Fuck you, that guy. Go away.
Fuck you, that guy.
Go away.
That's right. I don't, at least he was wearing a mask, you know, so I wasn't like really grossed out, but it was still pretty gross.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Tristan, you?
That's pretty terrible. I would like to thank all of the businesses who are doing the absolute best they can for people like me and probably Andrew. I don't know about you, Nick. You're going around driving with strange neighbors in their cars, but but for me, I have no interest in being close to other human beings for a while yet. So some of the elaborate setups I saw yesterday for curbside pickup, elaborate signage and arrows on the ground, and like Marcus Theaters is they made a whole new page in their app to support like picking up popcorn and food from their theaters remotely. Local places advertising, hundreds of feet from their restaurant, like, hey, we're still open for pickup, come and get it. And they've got, signs out and people with fancy trays so you don't have to touch the other human being to get your food. Just all that effort. I think it's allowing a tiny bit of normalcy to creep in. I can still go to my favorite restaurants and get my favorite foods. I just can't eat it in there. I can still have a movie night, just not at the theater. And the amount of effort, and I know it's, partially, maybe even mostly to keep their businesses open, but just bringing that little extra bit of comfort to the day and, the weeks that are all blending into each other is a lot of effort when they could just say, we're closed. We're not going to we're going to keep our operating expenses to a minimum. We're not even open. Forget about it. So thank you.
Cool. And Tristan, ditto, by the way, from I think all of us on the call here, on the call. Oh my God, I'm not at work yet.
Yeah, it's Sunday, Nick.
Is it? You lose track. Tristan, you just kind of mentioned it.
Some days I get up and I go to work, and other days I get up and I don't go to work. And that's all I know.
Right. That's kind of where we're at this point. But yeah, Tristan, you just kind of alluded to it. I would like to thank John Melk for not only letting me drive his incredibly rare car, which, by the way, because Tristan, you mentioned it there, we, outside of sitting in the car next to one another, we were appropriately socially distanced, sanitized, the whole thing. So it was as best as we could do to make it happen. But not only for letting me drive his really rare car, but I think more importantly for kind of diving into why that car was so important to him. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it kind of reaffirms what we're doing here, is that it might not be, as Tristan mentioned, a brand that you particularly enjoy, but just to hear someone so passionate about a certain type of vehicle or a certain brand of vehicle, like, that's why we do this, is because we're passionate about it too. So thank you to John for that experience. And Thanks to all of you listeners who feel the same way about whatever it is that you're passionate about in the car world. We love hearing from you. We love recording this for you, and we cannot wait to talk to you again. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sanitized, take care of yourselves. See ya.